Inflation just rose again. Headline CPI for June came in at 1.9%, up from 1.7% the month before. And no, you can't blame the carbon tax. It's been removed, and thank God it was. But the numbers still went up. If you're wondering how inflation rose, even with gas prices down and natural gas collapsing, you're not alone. We've reached the point where the official CPI doesn't reflect any real sense of relief because the price of essentials hasn't moved. The price of everything else is dropping for the wrong reasons. Here's what the numbers actually show this month. Gasoline prices were still lower than last year, but down only 1.3% year over year, compared to a 5.5% drop in May. That smaller decline pushed overall headline CPI upward. Natural gas fell 14.1%, airfares were down over 9%, and recreational vehicle fuel was down more than 11%. Telecom services also fell more than 5%. I always wonder where they find those people who are getting cheaper cell phone bills. But those categories didn't fall because inflation is under control. They fell because demand is down. Travel, luxury, and fuel-intensive activity are all weakening because Canadian households are scaling back. You're not seeing more money in your pocket, you're seeing fewer reasons to spend it. That's the trap we're in. The categories that look good on a spreadsheet, the ones that most people aren't even using. Now let's talk about the costs you can't avoid. Car insurance rose 7.2% year over year. And if that sounds familiar, it should. I covered this last month. Insurance premiums are climbing in part because of repeated vehicle theft and property crime. But that's not just a private sector issue. It's a policy failure. We've allowed bail reform to become catch and release, and insurers are passing that risk on to us. Rent increased another 4.7%. And shelter overall is still running hot at 2.9%. Mortgage interest costs remain elevated at 5.6% despite previous rate cuts. That's not going away anytime soon. And for those renewing in the next 12 months, this is only the beginning. Food prices are up 2.8% for groceries and 3.2% for restaurants, with upward pressure likely to continue given what we're seeing in the American data. So the Bank of Canada may have cut rates previously, but for renters, drivers, and anyone buying food, nothing is feeling better. In fact, everything is feeling worse. With today's CPI print, the Bank of Canada has only one more data set, July's CPI, before the next rate decision on September 3rd. Could this be a blip? Possibly. Gas prices were still falling, just not as steeply, and a sharp drop in July might pull headline CPI back down. But that doesn't solve the real problem, because the Bank of Canada doesn't base its decisions on gas or groceries. They look at core inflation. And the two measures they care the most about, CPI trim and CPI median, just came in at 3% and 3.1%. No change from last month. And let's be honest, that's not going to improve if the structural drivers aren't addressed. Car insurance is rising because the justice system isn't working. Rent is rising because housing policy is still stuck in 2015. And food prices are rising because we're exposed to global supply chains with very small domestic buffers. Nothing in this CPI report gives the Bank of Canada a green light for another cut. And everything it tells households is brace yourself. What we're watching now is a slow, quiet form of stagflation. The economy is weakening. That's clear from declining travel, reduced spending, and retail layoffs. But the essentials, food, shelter, insurance, keep climbing. It's the worst of both worlds, a soft economy with high non-discretionary inflation. And while this unfolds, our politicians are on summer vacation. Our neighbor is playing Russian roulette with our labor market. And influencers are spinning this into content, outrage, or fear, depending on what sells best. So part of that last bit is I've noticed a real uptick in North America about influencers trying to sell ways for regular people to get out from under inflation, including budget trackers. So I took the time and I built a free anonymous budget tracker that helps you calculate your own expenses and your own inflation rate if you do it month after month. CPI doesn't actually measure what you are actually paying in your household under your roof. It doesn't track your grocery bill, your lease, your mortgage renewal, your car insurance hike. But you can go and find my free budget tracker on my website. It's linked in my bio, www.economywithash.com, with no login, no data collection, no email, just a Google Sheet or a PDF you can download. And I honestly hope that that helps if you are looking for or need the help. I will be back Friday with the Squeeze Part 1, where I will go deeper into the pressures Canadians are feeling, not just prices, but across every part of daily life. I hope that you have a wonderful week.